All right, guys, we are live. Welcome to the Daytripper Photo Show. This is our special tips and techniques show on tripods. For those of you who have been following what we've been doing, the tips and techniques shows are designed to get a little bit more in-depth and give more of a benefit to watching our show. Gives you a bit more foundation of knowledge that isn't just, fun chat or photo review like the other shows. So for this show tonight, we're going to be talking about tripods. And we've done a show before on tripods. Way back, Gabriel, back on episode number 64. We had
64.
I know.
I was just knee-high to a grasshopper back then.
And I had a lot less gray. Yeah. We did a whole show on tripods, and I opened up the show notes from back then, and they're pretty sparse. So we didn't really get too much into some stuff. So we have a little bit more to get into.
Tripods, they're a thing. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.
Good night. Anyway, let's just talk about our usual cast of characters we have on the show. Gabriel, good day to you, sir. Welcome back to the show this week.
Yes. Well, I missed you last week, but everybody did because we were doing the Vaughan Film Festival, which was fun.
Yes, it was. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for helping out, by the way.
Hey, no problem. I'm feeling incredibly poorly color balanced tonight.
I think there's an issue with all of our cameras tonight. I mean, Phil looks good.
I think it's just
thank you. I did my hair.
Well, I don't think you have the grilled cheese out yet, so...
I don't have the grilled cheese of white balance, but I do have the thumb of, oh, come on.
Almost. Oh, come on. All right, well, thank you for being here. We got a lot to talk about, and I know we're hoping to keep the show around an hour tonight, so let's move along and say hello to Phil.
Hello.
Hey, buddy. How are you feeling this week?
I'm doing good.
Yeah?
Back, relaxed, ready to go.
It's been a fit and a bout and a big old mess of people getting sick lately, having stomach issues.
Going around. It's just a messy thing.
Messy
My
thing.
wife and my son both had either food poisoning or a gastro infection last week, which was fun.
Yeah, I was working the Vaughan Film Festival, coughing up a lung. I think I gave that to Robert. Robert's now doing the same thing. Navi apparently was not doing well from eating some trunk sausage. And
What?
Don't eat sausage out of your trunk, folks. It's not going to make you feel good.
Okay.
It's just it's like sitting around a campfire using patchwood. You just don't want to do it. It's just bad toxins and stuff.
When in doubt, throw it out. And if it's trunk sausage, just throw it out.
There's no thinking about it. All right, so back on top. Phil, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me again. I always like being here, and missed y'all last week, and so I'm happy to be back.
Well, you were going to run the show all by your lonesome last week. You were all like
getting ready to. I was just going to stare at a wall for a little bit and maybe clean the office because I've been here almost 6 months and I still have boxes.
Well, at least you have your stuff put away. You've got your Nintendo, gun there to shoot shoot some.
I hope
ducks.
it's called the Zapper or else. Zapper. It is totally called a Zapper.
Well
anyway.
Okay. Well, very cool. You got it set up. This just in, plaque behind you there. I don't even know what that says below there. But
no working during drinking hours.
Ah, yes. Yeah, I think we're all working on that tonight.
The secret to tidiness is tight framing.
Yes.
Because just outside of this framing, it is a disaster.
Not here. My wife would not have that. My place is usually...
Yeah, you've just got a kitty litter box.
Oh, yeah, and that's never good. Okay, so let's just get to the show for a few minutes. I just want to remind everybody who's watching, if you haven't already, please join the Daytripper Photo community on Google Plus for as long as it's around. It might be a lot of fun for you, and Google Plus is still kicking, and a lot of people are still loving it, so take advantage of the services that we offer and our show and all these things through the Google community. It's Daytripper Photo community on Google Plus. And also, if you like what we're doing, if you enjoy our show, click like on our YouTube channel, subscribe to our channel, share this with your friends. Let everybody know that you're watching our show because we have a great time doing it, and we hope you enjoy watching it. Oh, yeah, also, Q&A. I see Gordon. Hello, sir. He says hi. No question, just hi. A lot of folks will have some questions or comments that they think about when we're doing a show. So within the Hangout, there's actually something called the Q&A. If you hover your mouse over the window along the left side, about the third or fourth option down, you'll see something that says, strangely enough, Q&A. Click on that, and along the right side, you'll be able to ask your questions. We'll see them immediately and be able to answer them during the show live. So involve yourself. That's all part of what we do here, guys. We're a community, and we love to get some input and feedback from our viewers. And also, I just want to send a big shout-out to our sponsors, Sennheiser and LensPen. I've actually got my Sennheiser headphones here. I'm not wearing them tonight. I'm going to actually be letting Gabriel use these for a while. Thank you, Sennheiser, for letting us use the headphones. They sound amazing. And, Gabe, you'll probably get a lot of good use out of these.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a headphoneophile. I'm a big fan of trying different headphones and stuff, so I'm looking forward to giving those a spin.
Yeah, they sound great. I backed my AKGs for tonight just because I have a bit of a headache, and these are much softer on the head. So I'm just going for these. Rocking the AKG. All right. They don't sponsor us, though. It's okay.
Boo.
AKG. Okay. Never get sponsors. Yeah. Christine says, "Hey guys, just popping in to say a quick hello. Dealing with a family tragedy this week, so needed to break from life. Thanks for the distraction, guys. Hey, we are a distraction.
Let us be your break from life."
And thank you so much for watching, Christine. That's really cool. Heather says hello. Heather says hello. Hello. Hello to you, Heather. Heather lives around the corner from me. I see her every once in a while when I'm walking to work. It's pretty cool. Okay, so let's get to some meat and potatoes. Talk about some tripod-y stuff. Why are we talking about tripods? What is the big deal? Anybody can get a tripod. You can go down to your corner garage store and ask for tripods. I mean, you can buy $30 tripods.
I was in my corner garage store the other day. Corner garage store.
I don't know what that means. Yeah, I meant like a convenience store or something. You know, they sell tripods all over the place. So how do you know if you're getting a good one, or how do you know if it's going to be the right one for you? And that's hopefully what we're going to be able to help you out with tonight. We've all got tripods. We all use tripods for all different reasons. The first thing, though, when it comes to choosing a tripod, and there's so many to consider, there's all kinds of different prices. There's all kinds of different needs. What you need to do, first and foremost, is decide what are you using, like what are you actually mounting onto this tripod, what kind of gear do you have, and where are you using it? Like, what do you need it for?
I think that last part might even be more appropriate. You might not need one, depending what you shoot.
That's a good point. Elaborate.
Well, like if you're doing a lot of, let's say, candid street photography, and that's kind of your thing, you're probably not going to bring a tripod around. But if you're doing long exposures, you're shooting birds for long periods of time, sports games, trying to be, a little bit more creative, maybe one leg's a little shorter than the other and you're trying to keep things level, a tripod could be useful.
Did you just say, like, your personal legs are shorter than the others, so you need a tripod to stand?
Well, sometimes people, are always a little off, so if you have a little level on the tripod, it helps.
Okay, sounds good. You just never know what you're going to say.
Keep you on your toes.
That's awesome. But it's true. I mean, you never know where you're going to be or what you're going to do. I know Gabe and I, we did a shoot down in Toronto one day, and we had a great time. I brought my big tripod, my rock, with me. This thing's a basalt Gitzo, and it's not super light, but my geez, is it ever sturdy.
Yeah.
So we were doing we went on I think it was Google Plus photo walk about 2 years ago, Gabe. And June, it was on my birthday, actually, so it was June 28th. Had a lot of fun, walked all around the city, but then it got dark, and we started doing some street shooting, like literally shooting in the middle of the street in Toronto, and cars are driving by, and we're getting these long exposures, and without a nice solid tripod, that can't happen. Like, I'm the guy that Phil's talking about where one leg's shorter than another and I'm all skewed. So without that solid tripod, it's just not going to happen for me. So it was really good that I brought it, although I had to carry a fairly heavy tripod around Toronto all night long. So it's a little bit tiresome.
Absolutely.
But there's other kinds of tripods you can get too. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some different materials. We're going to talk about some different techniques that they use to make tripods. But again, I can't stress enough, before you go buy a tripod, you have to think, what lenses do you have? What camera do you own? How are you going to be shooting with this? So here's an example, guys. There's a little load capacity chart that I kind of wrote down here for myself. If you are working with about a 200 to a 300 millimeter lens, you're going to want a tripod that can handle a minimum weight of 25 pounds. Just to give you that stability, because keep in mind, guys, the farther you zoom, the more you're magnifying your own shake. Okay, now we're going to talk later about it's not just your own shake, it's also internal shake on a camera. So there's all these different factors that you have to compensate for. And if you have a tripod, let's just say like this guy, this one here, my wife's aunt gave me this years ago, and she said she had it in her attic for like 30 years or something. This tripod has lasted forever. It's not the most expensive tripod, but it's lasted forever. I mean, this is the kind of thing, you don't need to spend a lot of money and your tripod will last. However, it doesn't necessarily hold the weight of the heavier lenses I have. The couplings and the fittings aren't made with the same materials, so they transfer a lot of vibration. This plate right here is something to think about. A lot of people don't really talk too much about the different tripods, and this is called the tripod collar, and that's this piece just along the top of a tripod. The tripod collar, if it's not made out of solid material, you'll have a lot of slippage. You'll find the tripod will be very difficult to tighten. What are you grinning about, Phil?
I actually think I might have the same tripod.
Oh, do you?
I got it from my dad like years and years ago.
You know, it's
again
focal.
in like a garage for a while, and
yeah, you probably do have the same. Maybe this is yours. I don't know. Maybe it's made its rounds around from all of us. There's all kinds of different collar or clip systems. There's all kinds of different feet to consider. But really, when it comes right down to it, what does a tripod do? Here's my thought on that. A tripod should absorb and dissipate vibration with the materials and the components used to make it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, essentially it's there to get rid of your handshake.
That's right. Not only your handshake, but your camera shake and all the other kind of shake that's involved. Gabe, you don't use a tripod too much, do you?
No, I try to, and I own more tripods than I probably should. But most of the photography that I do doesn't require it.
So maybe you can get into that a little bit, because, I mean, you shoot almost every day. You're out shooting, you're doing something. So
yeah.
What do you do that would require a tripod, and how come not all of it requires tripod?
So last weekend I was doing some interior design photography. So interior designer designed and decorated a bunch of houses and wanted pictures for her website. So you can go in with a bunch of lighting, right? Or you can set your camera up on a tripod, do a 2 or 3 second exposure, just use the available light and create some really nice looks. And for this, you know, it's for an interior designer's website, so it doesn't have to be reality. Interior design is not necessarily about creating reality, it's about creating a mood in your reality. And so that's what I was doing with that. It worked out fantastic, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without a tripod. The interior designer, I had my whole setup with the 5D Mark III and the 24-105 and the tripod and the remote and everything like that. And then she would come in after with her Sony point and shoot and take a picture, and she'd kind of compare. I think she was trying to see if she could just do the pictures herself, and she looked at the picture on my camera and the picture on hers, and it was completely night and day. Mm. But I also, I don't know if we want to get into this right now, or if this is something that we'll get into later, but I have little tiny tripods, my phone, and I have bigger little tiny tripods for, like this one here is a Gorilla Pod, and it can handle a 5D Mark III with a 7200, and you can wrap it around a tree or a fence or something like that. You know, usually I use it with a 24-105 or a 1020 or something like that, and it's you know, got a fully functional you know, tripod head and stuff, so you can use it. You know, I brought it with me to Vegas. You know, you can set it up in all sorts of different circumstances and situations.
Now, well, that's the nice thing. There's a tripod for every need, right? Like I've got, like you were showing there, the little ones. I've got this little Manfrotto guy.
Yeah, that one's cool.
Which is just really small, and it folds up. You can use it like a little a stick when you're holding a camera doing video if you want to, or you can open it up and mount your camera and use a tripod, and you just press this little button, and it moves the ball head like that. So it's pretty straightforward and easy, but it doesn't really hold a lot of weight. And if you put weight on there too much, it'll start to sag and creep. And so it's very relevant. You have to make sure you know the weight of what you're carrying. Phil, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was gonna say with like the small tripods, they work really well to help out in a pinch. Like that little tripod, your Gorilla Pod. I don't know how confident I would be wrapping it around something and walking away from the camera. I'd want to be there in case it decided it wanted to slowly, list over and flop. I'd want to be there to grab it. So it's not like a big one where you could get in the shot or you could step away from it for a little bit if you're doing a super long exposure. But in a pinch, they can work really well.
Absolutely. I was talking before about this chart that I wrote for myself, and I'm glad you mentioned your gear that you were using on the tripod there, Gabriel. 5D Mark III, 24 to 105. I did some quick maths and checked out the weight you've got there. You're looking at about 4.35 pounds. 4.35 pounds. That's not a lot, and we're talking professional gear. 5D Mark III, beautiful camera. 24 to 105, pretty standard L series lens for a lot of shooters. So about 4.5 pounds is what we're talking about. So when I gave the example, if you're shooting between 200 to 300 meters or millimeters with a lens, you need 25-pound load capacity, because when you zoom out that much further, it's magnifying that vibration so much greater than these shorter focal lengths. You need extra weight stability on your tripod to really be able to compensate for that. 300 to 400 millimeters is 40-pound weight. 800 millimeter lenses, you need a 50-pound weight load-bearing tripod. Yeah. If your tripod can hold 100 pounds, it doesn't matter what gear you put on it. But then we start talking about heads, and Phil, you were talking about different kinds of heads earlier.
I was, but I just want to kind of jump in for a sec, because we're talking about millimeters and zooming, and I know everyone kind of understands that, but what's happening when we're zooming in is we're effectively concentrating what we're seeing. So we're getting tighter, tighter, and tighter, and tighter. So effectively, the tube of our lens is... This usually works. Hold on, I'm having tubular difficulties.
Tubular.
There's a cream for that.
Totally tubular, dude.
Do you see there's a cream for that? So what happens with our lens, right, is our lens gets longer. And as our lens gets longer, so right now, a little bit of shake back here, not a lot's happening up here. But if our lens gets really, really long, we zoom in a lot, that same amount of shake is exaggerated on the other end. And so even if you have a really light, 55 to 250 or 70 to 300, you still might need a really good head, because it's zooming in so far that the tiniest little motion is just going to be all over the place.
Exactly, and this is where units like this thing, where I can tighten this all I want, and if I tap it, it's still going to bounce around. It's still got some shimmy and some shake, and you can never really fully tighten it. That energy is just going to keep on bouncing and bouncing and bouncing.
Now, what you have there is actually one of the heads you can get on a tripod. And depending what you're shooting, a head like that could be a lot more useful than, say, a head like this, something like a ball head. Because a ball head is super useful. It's on your tripod. You usually loosen one thing, depending on how tight the other thing is. Super tight. There you go. And you can quickly move your head around. You can quickly flop your head sideways. You can put it right way up. You can do anything you want. However, if you're trying to shoot, let's say, birds, and you have a ball head, and you're flopping all over the place, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. Or if you're trying to pan with a ball head, move left to right, well, you got no sideways support with this.
Whereas there are some, though, that have the horizontal lock.
Like this one, where I could tighten it and I could spin it on its axis.
Right, exactly.
But something like the head you have, it has a different knob to do different things. So the one knob on the back, that's going to do your pitch. And then the one on the knob on the side is going to do your yaw. If that. And then the other one's going to do your angle, portrait to landscape, we'll call it.
It's hard in the camera and backwards.
Now,
there you go.
And so some tripods have a standard kind of thread. So the tripod I have here, I've already put the head back on, it's got a pretty standard thread. But the tripod you have probably doesn't have a standard thread. So when you're looking at tripods and you're looking at heads, some tripods you can replace the head on. So if I'm going out, I can use this head. If I want to be more creative and use a three-way head, as you had on yours, I could swap it out with that if I wanted to. Some tripods
on the need.
Exactly. Some tripods are stuck together, and so depending on what you need, maybe a tripod that's stuck together will work for you. Maybe one you can take apart might be better.
Absolutely. Now that's actually great points. There's all kinds of different fun things though that tripods are good for. Like I do a lot of light painting, and without a really good tripod that's solid too, it makes it a lot more difficult. I mean, with the rock here, I can set this up at all different angles. A lot of tripods have the ability to kick your legs out completely horizontal and almost get flat to the ground, or kick one leg out at a different rate than the other two legs. So if you're on a weird angle, or if you're shooting in a river somewhere and you have to put one leg down further because you want to brace it into the water and have the other two legs shorter, having individual legs like this, it gives you so much more freedom than having joined legs like this. With this piece here, I can't remove these little pieces, so the legs always have to open at the same distance. It doesn't give me that flexibility. So something else to think about if you're buying a tripod, make sure you have one that's going to work for your needs and be as flexible. Some even come with a monopod built in.
And those are really cool tripods.
A lot of them are, yeah.
Ones, especially because you take a leg off, and effectively that leg you stick your head on, and effectively you have now a monopod and a tripod.
Yeah, so you essentially remove one of these pieces, and you put this piece on this piece, and bada boom, bada bing.
Now, some people would argue that all tripods are effectively monopods if you simply just extend one leg out a little further. But this thing weighs a ton, and a monopod is super light. There's advantages and disadvantages to both.
Yeah, if I'm walking around the Vaughan Film Festival, I'm using this.
Yeah.
Simple, easy. This is a carbon fiber tripod, or monopod, I should say, with a ball head. And if I'm shooting at a festival, I can just loosen this a little bit and in one place be able to shoot everything and just pick it up and move around with it. If I don't need it, I can just take this and hook it on my belt and walk around with it. It's so much more convenient than having this. You know what I'm saying? Now this is top heavy and bulky, and I look stupid carrying it around. So, yeah. Okay, so Gordon asks, whenever you get around to it, can you explain why some ball heads have friction adjustment? I know the what, just not the why.
I think it just comes down to an extra knob and extra cost. Like, this thing's got a friction adjustment on it, and it has a lock on it, so I can actually loosen it, so I can adjust it, but I can also friction it up so it's a little bit firmer. So if I was, let's say, tracking something, shooting a movie, I could have a little bit more friction, a little bit more resistance. But it also, I think, just depends on whether or not the manufacturer wants to add an extra thing.
Well, it's also really good for shorter throw. So, for example, if I have this tripod monopod head here, and I loosen the head and it's completely loose, then I have to tighten it quite a bit to make sure it's fully tightened. If, on the other hand, I have the friction nice and tight, so all I have to do is a little twist. Now it's just a much quicker half a crack to loosen it, and then another half a crack to tighten it, and it's completely secure. So the idea of the friction adjustment is to give you a shorter throw in general, so you have a little quicker control of making it really tight or just loose enough to move the camera. And that's something I think a lot of it I didn't even really realize until I did some research for the Tonight Show, is like I've got the tension in mind. The tension adjustment is actually done by a different control internally. But once you set it, you don't need to worry about it. It still has movement and motion. I can still go horizontal, vertical, and it just takes a little bit of a twist, and this thing's not moving anywhere. So that's one reason why the friction is really handy. Hope that helps, Gordon. And keep the questions coming, guys. And if, Gordon, we didn't answer your question, then ask it again or something. We'll get more into that for you. Now, here's the thing. I mean, there's different materials. But before we get into the different materials, what do you guys think of the collar lock versus the clip lock?
Well, first off, let's take a look at the two locks. What you have there is your collar lock, and what I have here is a clip lock. So effectively, unclip, I move, I clip back in. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. I personally don't really care. As long as like my tripod here. Oh, that's a terrible example. So they're super rusty, but my clip locks on the other side of the clip, they have, and I don't know if I can make this work. We're going to try. They have a nut, and so this nut, I can actually tighten my clip lock. Some tripods, I'm going to say a lot of tripods that have a clip lock can't tighten. So over time, I find the clip actually gets looser and looser and looser.
Right.
Whereas with the collar that you have, you can just tighten and tighten and tighten until you finally tighten it down to the point where it can't get any tighter. There's no adjustment on that. It's simply just loosen, tighten, loosen, tighten.
The biggest problem I find with these kinds of locks is people just start unscrewing it and then unscrewing it and unscrewing it and unscrewing it, and then they pull the leg out and it falls apart.
Yeah.
And that frustrates a lot of people because, you know, I'm going to say it, guys, if you mess these up, it's because you don't know what you're doing. They're easy. You literally, especially big hands.
Darwin's tripod.
It's so true. You literally, with one hand, grab them, give it one crack, and then they just open.
Yeah.
And then you close it, and then you give it one crack, and they're all tight. You never have to loosen these more than just one twist. And then they're good to go. And then that's a very short, quick tighten as well. On the less expensive options, now at Henry's we sell Cameron. Cameron's a great value. They make some tripods like my other tripod here that you can pick up for about $350, where this thing over here would cost you $1,100. Because they're so much less expensive, they do use different collar lock. And you have to be aware, there's different kinds of locks. Phil, on your tripod you have, the locks that you have on yours, they're adjustable.
Yes.
Manfrotto does that. They even give you the key that you can clip onto the side of your post so that you always have, there you are, you always have the tool handy. Makes it very convenient if you have to tighten that, which is why I really like Manfrotto. And by the way, Manfrotto and Gitzo are both Vitek Group companies. They're both owned by the same company. They're both made in Italy. They're both excellent quality. One is a Cadillac, one is a Chevy. They're both good. They just work a little different. This, on the other hand, this is a completely different kind of lock, and it's so frustrating because you have to loosen it and then go to the next one and loosen it, and they make a squish on the post. And this is the problem with a lot of the clip locks, is when you close them, they squish your post. And out over time, your post bends a little bit if you keep tightening and tightening. And not only that, but it's only making about 2 or 3 points of contact when you do that. So when you clip it, it's cinching it in on the top and bottom, kind of clamping it. Where with the collar lock system, it's making literally a 360-degree lock around the post. If you can see inside here, as you tighten that,
Pieces in there.
Yep, that just cinches it right in and tightens it all the way around. So literally like that, and it's not going to move. So it's pretty awesome.
Now, I will say it also, I think, depends on what you're doing with your tripods. Like, I'm terrible with equipment. I'm going to put that out there. That shouldn't be that unknown. But this thing's been in salt water. It's been in mud. It's been in pretty much whatever I can jam it into. Gabriel. No. But I've had salt in this, I've had sand in this, and it doesn't change how these legs work. The one thing I find with the twist locks, or collar locks? Twisty locks?
Twist lock.
I'm going to call them twisty locks.
Sure, twisties.
Is if you get sand and stuff jammed in there, they're going to get a little gritty over time. So if you're not jamming your tripod into stuff, twist locks, not the end of the world. If you're going to be sticking into water and mud and getting it dirty, if you're okay with it making some gritty noises every once in a while, fine. If you don't like having anything make noise, then maybe the clamp lock or clip lock that I have is a better option.
Keep in mind, too, Phil, there's different qualities.
Absolutely. But when you get sand jammed in something, it's in there pretty good.
I haven't had that problem yet.
Okay.
I just, with these things, that's okay, thanks. But I've had these things crammed into some pretty tight places, not Gabriel. And it's not gotten gritty. Yeah, this read a song about that.
Not gotten gritty.
Not gotten gritty. Yeah. So Gordon says yes. We answered the question twice, which is great. And Mark Flinders is watching from Thunder Bay tonight. Mark, man, you are everywhere. Mark is a diehard. I love Mark.
Now we've been talking a lot about clips
Yes.
and locking and legs and heads, but we've also referred to, you have an aluminum tripod there, you have a carbon fiber tripod there. I'm being really nice calling the one aluminum. I have aluminum legs on my tripod. So there's a bunch of different materials. So why would someone buy a carbon fiber tripod? Why would someone buy a basalt tripod? Why would someone buy an aluminum tripod? What's the real big difference in the need to have these different materials?
Great question, Phil. That's a beautiful question. Gabriel?
Wow! Throw it off to me.
I'm sorry.
It depends on how much vibration absorption you need. Certain materials absorb vibration better than others. It depends on whether you're going to be hiking long distances. If you're going to be doing a lot of hiking, then you want a lighter tripod. If you're just going to be going from your car to maybe 40, 50 feet, then who cares how heavy the tripod weighs? You can get a heavier, sturdier, or a heavier tripod that costs less. But if you're going to be going to Algonquin for 2 weeks, then you're going to want a super light tripod.
Absolutely.
One thing that I found out when I was doing storefront photography in malls, and a lot of malls have like floating floors, and a lot of times that you don't notice it when you're walking around, but when you're standing still, a lot of the floors actually move around a fair amount. And so you'd want a tripod if you're trying to take a long exposure of a storefront. You'd want a tripod that can absorb a fair amount of vibration in order to compensate for that. But if you're not doing anything like that, you can just get like a World War II metal tripod that can also second as a 50 caliber machine gun tripod and go to town. It doesn't matter.
So true. You absolutely have to think about where you're using these things. Okay, now as far as materials go, I mean, really, carbon fiber is going to give you probably the best vibration dampening. It's probably going to give you the lightest weight, and potentially even the most rigidity. Now, rigidity is a term that's used in tripod lingo. Torsional rigidity. That's the amount of flex in the leg itself when fully extended. So if I were to take this is basalt, by the way. This is a volcanic rock. It's like a fiberglass / carbon fiber kind of rigging. But if I loosen this up and I extend this fully and tighten it all up, the torsional rigidity is the amount of flex. You can't even see it, but if I were to push down on this and the other side was really secured, and I were to push down, you'd see the leg kind of bend a little bit.
You can see it a little bit on the small end.
Yeah, you're going to see it more so on the smaller end. And the more collars or more clips you have, the more flex you're going to find in the leg as well, because you're putting extra joints in there, right? Mm-hmm. So when you start to have that torsional rigidity problem, the problem you're talking about, you're in Costa Rica, Phil. You are in the middle of a waterfall. You're doing a trash the dress thing, and you've got your one leg crammed into a rock, and you've got the other legs braced somewhere else. If you lean into that tripod and the torsional rigidity isn't strong, it's going to flex and bend. Mm-hmm. So carbon fiber is going to give you the best rigidity of all tripods, but with lighter weight and better dampening and more rigidity, you also get more cost. It costs a lot of money to make a carbon fiber tripod. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got aluminum. Aluminum has okay rigidity.
Well, it's pretty solid.
Pretty solid,
bending.
Right? If you have a 100-pound block of aluminum, it's going to be the most solid thing you'll ever work with, right? But it comes with extra weight.
Yep.
But they're very inexpensive. So there's a bit of a trade-off here. You can go for carbon fiber, which is overall the best probably for weight and strength and so on, but it costs you, especially if you get good carbon fiber, by the way, folks, because there's a huge difference in the kinds of carbon fiber. We're going to get to that in a minute. But rigidity is pretty good on aluminum, not great, and it's just very bad damping. Now, why would we need damping, Phil? Like, what would we do day to day with the tripod where we would need to have that absorb more energy?
Well, every time we take a picture, the camera is moving. And just at fault of how our cameras work, we have mirrors that move, we have shutters that move, we have wind blowing on the camera, we have maybe focus motors whirling in and out. So there's a lot of motion happening in the camera itself, and if we can't dampen that motion, if you sat your camera on a solid block, it would cause its own shake. So it needs to be able to work and compensate for its own motion.
True that, true that. What if we're doing some long exposures on a bridge, Gabe? You're standing on a bridge, car drives by on the bridge that you're sitting on, and you've got your tripod sitting on there.
Right.
And
Yeah,
you want something...
it has to be able to, well, depending on the size and the makeup of the bridge, but it needs to be able to absorb the vibration from the car going over. I think the one that you were saying, the one that you had is basalts. It's, yeah, and it's supposed to be really good at absorbing vibrations, whereas the main photo that I use is just metal, and it's very good.
Transfers energy, doesn't absorb it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's absolutely true. I thought you were actually going to say bath salts again.
Bath salts.
Bath salts? No, that's only in Florida.
Oh, yeah. No, I will actually use an example for this. Not last winter, the winter before. I went down... What was it last winter? No, winter before. I went down to the lakefront to do some super, super long exposures of the waves coming in across the ice. And I set my tripod up. It's an aluminum tripod. I set it up. I set up like a 5.5-minute exposure. Timed out because my camera couldn't do that, so I had to use a remote. But I set the camera up and walked away from it, came back to it, and the little bit of shake from my feet and from the waves hitting the giant block of ice we were on, my aluminum tripod just straight into the camera, and I had just the littlest bit of, motion blur, or I should call it like almost like handshake in the shot.
Micro shake, yeah.
And it was a pain.
Well, especially after you invest all that time to make the exposure.
Exactly. And you look at the back of the camera and it looks fine. You get home, you look at it on the computer and you see it a lot larger. You get that little bit of shake. Yeah. So it's it's important to have that counter motion if that's what you're going to be doing.
So as a breakdown here, aluminum, very lightweight, very strong, and very cheap. Magnesium. We haven't talked about magnesium yet because a lot of fittings you get on tripods and such. You can tell this Gitzo tripod head right here. This is all magnesium. So magnesium is also 30% lighter than aluminum and actually stronger than aluminum, but again, more expensive to make and harder to work with. Basalt, it's a woven rock material, very similar to carbon fiber. It's made with volcanic rock, actually, silica, and other things mixed in. Apparently they stopped using it because when the process of actually grinding down the rock and putting in these chemicals, apparently it's poisonous or something, and people were dying. So, well, I don't know. I don't know. But
people these days are such whiners.
I know, right? Like, just come on. It's a good tripod. Just suck it up. And then, of course,
back when they used to look like the radon paint when they were drawing the glowing on the hands.
Yeah, back when I was a kid and my mom would walk in and say, "What are you doing?" And I'd say, "I'm breaking all these thermometers so I can play with the mercury." And she'd say, "Okay, don't cut yourself on the glass." That was the dangerous part.
Explaining things.
When I was living in Vermont, the woman who owned the house that we lived in is a volunteer fire department, and they were given Geiger counters because of Chernobyl. This is all when Chernobyl happened. And in Vermont, she was tracking the radiation from Chernobyl. Total squirrel here, but pretty crazy. And she's just like, it's good. Anyway, that didn't happen. So, yeah, so carbon fiber, good stuff. It's the best, it's most expensive, but yeah, it's good. Mark said he has the Cameron tripod, fairly lightweight, that he uses for travel. He keeps it in his checked baggage. It keeps the weight in his checked baggage down. So that's important too. I mean, a lot of us do a lot of traveling where you have very small planes and very small weight requirements, and you have to bring a lot lighter tripods for these things. So traveler tripods or carbon fiber is kind of essential for that. Tom's actually watching from LA. That's pretty cool. 7:10 in the morning right now, or I think PM or AM. I'm not sure. And he says he's a hiker. Hiking sticks also have a decision which is better. Clip is better. Dirt and grime can affect colors. Again, I completely agree with you guys, but I've had these things in muck, and a lot of these carbon or these better quality units, when you have the collar and you close it up, it ejects a lot of that residue out the bottom. So I think the quality to do with how much grit and grime you're going to get in those collar locks. I've never had an issue, and if I ever did, I could take them apart and clean them and put them back together again. So there's always that too. Steve says one tripod he has is aluminum. It's a pig to move and carry, but it does great in the middle of a river. Yeah, it sometimes helps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Heather says carbon fiber is good for storm chasing instead of lightning rod aluminum.
Now, I want to refute that a little bit. I'm sorry. But carbon fiber is still conductive. If you're in the middle of a field, it's still going to attract. It's not going to be as conductive as a giant metal pole, but it's still going to be probably more conductive than most of the items around you. So it's a little safer, but it's not that much safer.
We'll make a video on it. We'll go to a golf course during a storm. I'll bring my carbon fiber monopod.
Okay. Yeah, Pixar didn't happen.
Yeah, and then you take your metal tripod, and we'll both hold them up in the sky, and we'll see who fries first.
It depends on who holds it up higher, but that's a different story
altogether. I'm doomed.
Yeah, totally. Because it still is a conductive material. Carbon is a conductive material. These little brushes and old motors, anyway. Where now that would be a Super Squirrel. We're not going to go.
Super Squirrel. It's okay. But Mark made a really good point. How the heavier tripod is great. Oh, was it Mark?
In the middle of a river?
In the middle of a river?
I think so.
It was somebody. I apologize. I forget. Anyway, sounds like a Daytripper activity.
Sounds good.
Our weather's always too good for that to happen, though. So yeah, no, weight is an extreme concern. If you have a very lightweight tripod because you need to travel light and so on, having more weight on that tripod gives you more stability. We've just talked about that. So a little trick for y'all, boys and girls. Oh, it was Steven. That's right, it was Steven who said that, Steve Cornfield. I carry this around with me all the time. When I'm doing my photography, this is a bag that I got when I bought some cotton carrier equipment, cotton. So my hip holster and all that, it came in this really cool bag. Now, most of the time, because I've got about 4 or 5 of these, most of the time, my wife uses these to clean her delicates. When the washing machine, you put them in there, it keeps them separate. You don't have to worry about having delicates all destroyed. But I always keep one of these in my camera bag because if I need extra weight, I pull out this bag, I hang it from my tripod, and I put a bunch of rocks or stones in it, or even just use my camera bag itself and hang it from the tripod, and that gives you a stiffer base, so you're not going to have as much flex. Little tip for y'all.
Mm-hmm.
I get southern when I start talking.
Apparently.
Yeah, y'all. Okay. What's this? I'm guessing that a photographer is more conductive than carbon fiber. I would probably say a photographer is more conductive than carbon fiber, Mark.
Water content.
Yeah, exactly. We would have a higher boil rate. Okay. We've talked about materials, carbon fiber, aluminum, basalt, all that kind of stuff. Wood is another option that some people go for. Aside from the extreme weight, wood is actually a really good absorber of energy. But we haven't really talked about how these things are built. We talked about there's good and bad versions, but there's a dramatic difference in how they're built. Sorry, Phil, what were you going to say?
There was actually a question about heads, and actually think about plates. And I think most tripods you can get these days, there we go, are going to have some type of quick release plate, meaning that you attach something to the bottom of your camera, and that something attaches very quickly to the top of the tripod or off the tripod. Some of the older tripods you're going to run into, they can be super, super sturdy tripods, but they have to be manually attached and reattached to the tripod on that ongoing basis, probably like the Focus one you have.
No, that's got a plate.
It's got a plate too, and so you generally want a quick release plate. Now, the only bummer to quick release plates is it seems like everyone has their own version. Manfrotto's different, Gitzo's different, Really Right Stuff is different. So generally, once you get into a tripod ecosystem, you're kind of stuck in it. So if you have a Gitzo head and a Manfrotto head, they're usually 2 different plates.
I found a trend. A lot of manufacturers are going to the standard
like square
Arca plate.
Yeah.
Arca Swiss plate. Arca is basically, like Gabriel has right there.
Yes.
So if you can take that plate off, you'll see that you basically just loosen the side, and then it just pops off.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's pretty straightforward. That's actually a Peak Design piece.
Yep.
That's a Peak or Jobu plate, right?
Like Peak Design.
Looks like Peak Design on my Joby.
Joby.
I got Peak on my
But the
Joby.
Joby's similar idea, and
Yeah. It's just the one that came with the Joby was a cheap plastic one, and so I replaced it with the higher end one.
Makes a difference. A metal versus plastic, you don't have to worry about it bending and warping.
Yeah, and the problem with plastic is, as you said, it warps. So if you're tightening something down, the plastic underneath, as you tighten, is just going to give, and it's never going to be 100% sturdy.
Right.
And we've talked actually a lot about different materials for tripods. The material for tripod you always want to avoid is plastic.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're clamping plastic onto metal, metal wins. You're clamping metal onto plastic, metal wins. And it's just always going to crush whatever's underneath it, especially if it's plastic.
This piece right here, there was a big plastic band that was around it, and I was going in and out from the cold to the heat, and I set it down on the ground, and the whole piece just cracked and fell on the ground. So, yes.
And like if we look at, let's say, the Henry's tripods, the ones you can get from Henry's, the difference between a plastic metal tripod, so a mixture between the two, and a full metal tripod, you're looking at probably like $30.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, the best tripod, but for the cost of it being all metal for everyday kind of use, it could be a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Something else though we should really get to, and before we get too late, is how this stuff is built. So
absolutely. Sorry, I know I sidetracked a little.
No, it's okay. It's fine. We got in some good knowledge there. If you're using a carbon fiber unit, so let's use the Cameron product from Henry's. I love this stuff. It's very affordable. I mean, $350 compared to $1,200. Sure, it'll do. It does a very good job, actually. It turns into a monopod. It has a ball head, has Arca-Swiss plate on the top. Excellent value. However, the materials they use are several layers wound of carbon fiber with all the carbon fiber weave, I guess you could say, in the same direction. If you look at carbon fiber material, you see that there's a woven pattern there. Let's see if I can make this a little easier to see.
Well, it's a fabric that effectively they're laminating with some type of adhesive together. Think fiberglass, but better.
Yeah.
I don't know how fiberglass works, and that was a terrible analogy. Paper mache is actually a great analogy.
Actually, it is.
Using newspaper and Mod Podge or whatever that stuff is, wallpaper paste. It's super strong carbon with glue with more super strong carbon. It's just layers and layers of awesome.
Right. Now this monopod is a few years old, and they've changed the design. They now use something called Carbon Exact, and this is a Gitzo product. What it is, you can see how there's a very loose, but it's cross-threaded around itself. On the Cameron stuff, you don't really have as much cross-threading, and each layer is woven with the same threading, or I guess you could say the same striations in the same direction. So there's a little bit more likelihood of that kind of cracking like a kendo stick. With the new carbon fiber from Gitzo, at least, they actually have one layer like this, and then another layer like this, and then another layer like this, and another layer like this. So the striations are all different. So it's extremely difficult to break that material. So that's where they get the strength from. And it's 6 or 8 layers depending on which one you choose. So that is a huge difference in quality and strength and torsional rigidity, and that's just the way that the carbon fiber is built. Another difference in tripods is how they actually cast the heads, the metal components. Because not everything on your tripod is made out of carbon fiber, right? So, for example, I mentioned earlier, this is all magnesium, where this right here is aluminum. So a lot of times you'll find these pieces here, you tighten it a little notch too much, and it'll crack the metal around the back or somewhere along that way. Mm-hmm. That's usually done because the way that they make it and the way they pour that material is called pressure casting. So you have a mold, they put the stuff inside, and then they pressurize it until it's really strong. You like that? Yeah. Anyway, so that's how most things are cast and built. With The Gitzo product, what they do is something called gravity casting. So they have the mold, and they drip the metal into it incrementally, so it forms and it fills in all those little gaps and those. There's never any air pockets. You don't have to worry about one of these little pieces here just snapping off because there's an air bubble inside. It takes a lot longer for it to make. It's a higher cost to build it, but that's why these things are more expensive. You don't have to worry about them breaking. You pretty much have a lifetime guarantee on stuff like this. So if it's really important to you, usually you pay a little bit more.
And usually, and especially with things like a tripod or a monopod, if you purchase something that maybe is a little bit more expensive, chances of you replacing it is relatively low, unless you lose it or you somehow break it. And most of these things that when you do spend a bit more on, you're not really going to break. Like the only person I've ever heard of that had a carbon fiber tripod that broke it was because they shut it in a car door.
Yeah, it takes something pretty extreme.
For the most part, like these things, once you pay a little bit more, it's going to last you as long as you're shooting. It's not like a camera that if you buy a $3,000 camera, in 4 years, there's something brand new for the same amount of money that is exponentially better. Tripods don't really change. We've been using really the same idea for them for the last several, decades.
And that's where we get the difference between price and cost.
Yeah.
I'd say
price.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say price is how much you pay for the thing. Cost is how much that's going to last you and how much it's going to cost you over its lifespan.
Exactly.
So if you spend a little bit more up front, you might pay a little bit more, but the cost will be a lot less because you won't have to replace it and you can use it for way more purposes.
Exactly.
What were you saying, Gabe?
I'd say look at the details as well. I've seen tripods where just the feet, right? They're normal feet, but you can spin them. And if you spin them up, there's a little spike that comes out, so that if you're putting in ice or something like that, it makes it a little bit more stable. My man Frodo, which I don't have with me right now, it's at the studio, but it just has little rubber caps on the legs. And the problem with that is if you're shooting on ice or if you're shooting on any type of grippy material, my tripod obviously has 3 legs and only one little rubber cap. And the other 2 legs, the other 2 little rubber caps are on the bottom of Lake Wilcox somewhere because we were doing fire on ice, and I didn't realize when I pulled it out of the ice they got stuck there.
Oh wow! You can buy replacements of that though.
Yeah, you can, but with I got I think the $300 tripod. If I had gone with the $450 tripod, then they would have had feet like that. Just an extra little detail where you can spin them down and they're non-removable. You don't have to worry about losing them. Tripod, a tripod is a tripod is a tripod. I mean, there's not. In one way, there's not a lot you can do with a tripod. It's going to have 3 legs. And in another way, there's a huge amount you can do with a tripod with the tiny little details like that, the tiny little details of how it extends, the material it's made out of, the amount of vibration it absorbs. So really, it's not you don't want to walk in and say, oh, it's got 3 legs, it'll work for me. It's the small little details that you want to look for when you're picking a tripod.
So true. That's why I think it's always a good idea to go in prepared. When you're ready to buy a tripod, go in prepared. Do some research. See what gear you have. Maybe bring it with you so you can put it on the tripod and try it out and see how it feels. Talk to a salesperson who's going to go into a little bit more detail than just, here's a tripod, thanks for the money, see ya. You want to be able to find out the answers to your questions. What makes this one better than this one? A little tip for everybody. A buddy of ours, Blake, good friend, he's been on our show many times. He bought himself one of those 3-legged thing tripods, and it's one of the tallest tripods I've ever seen. And I kind of used to be like, dude, why do you need such a tall tripod? I'm 6'4", and I can't even reach the top of this thing when he has it fully extended. He can go like 9 feet with this thing. And the more I think about it, the more stupid I feel because the taller tripods give you possibilities of using your tripod for so many more things than just mounting your camera to it. I've seen him several times pull out a flash and mount it to the top and get a really good vantage point from a high flash. You can do so many different things having a really, really tall tripod. So having the ability to get a huge tripod isn't such a bad idea. Although, we kind of touched on it earlier, the number of leg segments has a lot to do with its rigidity. So a really tall tripod with 3 leg segments is pretty cool. but most of the time you'll have 4 or 5 leg segments on those really tall tripods, and you'll feel that they'll be quite wobbly, which is where you'd want to put some extra weight on there to cinch it in and give it more strength. As Tom says, weight also dampens vibration, so it makes a big difference when you have a little extra weight on there.
And you were right about tripods. That little 1/4-inch thread that goes into the bottom of your camera, it's the same thread that'll thread into the bottom of that little foot that comes with your flash, or into the bottom of a cactus trigger or a pocket wizard, or something along that line. So if you have a tripod, you also effectively have a light stand.
That's right. And a pretty sturdy one, too.
Absolutely. A whole lot sturdier than most light stands. The only downfall is your average tripod goes, yay high, and the average light stand goes, that high, except for the fact, sometimes you get Blake's tripod, and that thing's super, super tall. Yeah. I've never seen it, but it sounds interesting.
Three-legged thing. I think he's got the Brian or the Eric. I always forget.
Okay.
But the Three-Legged Thing is another brand. They make good quality tripods, carbon fiber for about $450. Decent value, well built. I always found them to be a little lightweight and kind of shimmy.
Okay. Well, it also comes down to leg segments. You're right. And, the taller the tripod, usually the bigger the more segments they have. But it also goes with travel tripods. If you buy a travel tripod that has 5 segments so that it can be this big, but you never really travel with it, thing up on stability and rigidity for something that's a lot smaller. Whereas you can get something like this where it's massive and it's heavy and it's metal, but this thing is super solid. And you can always put a strap on it if you want to throw it over your shoulder.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually showed that. It's something I want to quickly talk about before we say goodnight. But what were you going to say?
I was going to say, and so this thing's heavy, but with the strap on it, I throw it over my shoulder, and it's not the worst thing to carry around. And at least, less encumbered you are with your tripod, the easier it is to work with. So with this one, I throw it over my shoulder. I can have my side bag underneath it. Not the end of the world. It's like I don't have a tripod with me. But if I had to carry that thing in my hand all the time, I'd hate using it. And I would find excuses not to bring it.
And that's, I think, a lot of people do. And they also find that when you use a tripod, you set it up and you plant yourself and you don't move. This is where my tripod is. This is where every picture I have to take has to be. I disagree. Martin actually talks about it quite a bit, where you basically visualize where you want your camera first, and then put your tripod in that position, rather than set up your tripod and then take pictures. To your point about... Sorry, go ahead.
I was doing that a fair amount at the when I was doing the shoot last week in the interior design. I would walk into the room, find the shot with my camera, and then set the tripod up to mimic that.
And so many people do it the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have a tripod that goes to their eye level, but because your tripod can go to your eye level doesn't mean it needs to. Put the thing right on the ground. Try and get it higher than you. Spread the legs out and lie it flat on the ground and shoot through flowers. It doesn't just have to be from your level.
I know Scott Kelby, that's one of his pet peeves, is that he said he'll do a workshop and people will set up with a tripod and he'll come back half an hour later and people are in the exact same spot. And he encourages, don't take any more than 3 pictures in the same position. And then use your tripod not as a stabilizer but as a UFO. Remember, it can go this way and it can go that way and it can float around and it can go in all these different places. And use your tripod for creativity instead of just being static.
Absolutely. On the point of being more compact with extra segments, you can see this has 4 collars, which means it's a 4-segment tripod. You can see that the top is right here. This is as long as it is. This can fully extend to about 6 feet 9 inches, as it is. So it's a very tall monopod. And keep in mind, too, with these color locks, when you lock it, it makes a full lock. So it essentially makes this one solid piece of stick. When you have a clip, you still have a joint. You still have a potential to bend. So there's pros and cons to all of this, guys, and you really have to do your research and find out what's right for you. How you carry it, having one of those little slings, which some people call a quiver. There's all kinds of really... The first time somebody came in and asked for a tripod quiver, I was like, what? You're going to shoot it like an arrow? What are you talking about? Anyway, that's apparently what they call. And there's even bags you can get. This is just one of the cheap kind of bags I picked up from Henry's. And I carry my tripod, my monopod, and this is the coolest of all. Ready for this? My GoPro selfie stick. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, it's important stuff. This I don't need to worry about being really flexible. This is perfectly fine.
That's nice. I like that hollow tubular design. It makes it kind of an accurate representation of your soul when you use it.
Yeah. Okay, I never really dug that deep into it, but now that I feel hollow and cheap, I'm going to put that away.
Selfie stick.
I do want to get back into legs of tripods. I don't know about you guys, but my general kind of rule of thumb when I'm using my tripod is I go with the fattest leg first.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I have more metal, then in my mind, I have a more stable tripod.
No, it's true.
I will also try not to extend my leg fully. And so if I have to extend it out, I might put this out 3/4 of the way, and then put this out a little bit. That way I have more material inside, and it's harder for that leg to flex, because it's sitting inside, and it's harder to move. When it's all the way out, it can be more floppy.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
One last point, which I'll just make quickly, and then I have to go at 10:30. I have to go at 10:30.
Okay.
This is a terrible representation of a tripod, but many tripods, you have legs here, and you go dunk, 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 and they extend. And then a lot of tripods also have a middle post here, and usually your biggest point of failure is that middle post there. So you have carbon fiber, pinching, 100%, great rigidity, vibration, compensation, and then you take this post, like Brian's showing there, and you put it up 100%, and a faint breeze, a butterfly, flutters by your tripod and shakes your stick, because that is a gigantic point of failure. So try and get a tripod that can go as high as you need it to go without having to extend the middle stick. Absolutely. And I know some photographers, they'll even just cut that stick off. I leave mine on my Manfrotto, because my Manfrotto, this is not it, but my Manfrotto can go up and then go sideways and actually mount sideways, so you can shoot straight down, like on flowers and things like that, which is pretty cool. But yeah, don't say, oh, well, this is almost tall enough, for what I need with the legs extended, but I have the center bar. That center bar is where you can get a wider vibration.
Good point. And you know what, Gabriel? I think we can pretty much call it a day. We've covered everything we want to cover. We are an hour into the show, so I think that's pretty much where we want to be. Before we say goodnight, I just want to show Phil and his horizontal flexibility.
Sideways.
There you are.
Now, Gabriel has the newer version of this, which you don't have to take apart. But
yeah,
some of them can go sideways. So if you're shooting down at flowers, as you said, you can move the head out just a little bit off center so you don't get the legs in the picture.
Yep.
It's a super useful thing.
There's some really cool, handy features on tripods, and I totally encourage anybody who has any questions to get a hold of me or get a hold of any of us. You can reach me at the Newmarket Henry's location if you ever have any questions. I'm happy to show you the differences. As anybody would know who's ever bought a tripod from me, I don't just sell you the first tripod. In fact, I out and out tell you I'm a tripod snob. I want you to buy your last tripod first. I don't want you to get into having to buy 2 or 3 tripods in your future. And if you can afford it, get the best one you can get. If you can't afford it and you have to just make do, so be it. I'll still talk to you. Don't worry. I won't think less of you.
The other thing I like about tripods is that they're not camera bodies. It's like, oh, I bought my camera body on Monday, and on Thursday they released a new one. Phil said that I have the newer version of that Manfrotto tripod. I think I bought it about 8 years ago.
I know, these legs are ancient.
And buy it.
Yeah. It's true. And because his is newer, it doesn't mean mine is bad. It just means that when I want to put it sideways, it takes me an extra 30 seconds. But it also gives me more rigidity to my tripod collar, so I'm actually okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes improvements are actually going backwards in some cases. I just want to remind everybody before we say goodnight. What was that?
You guys are mean. You tell me that my tripod sucks.
You're putting the words there.
Hey, I'm going for the $40 special here, okay?
All right.
Thank you for that, by the way. I've used that tripod quite a bit.
And it can work. And, the best tripod is the one you bring with you. If you didn't bring a tripod with you, a rock, your camera bag, a bench, a garbage can, it's going to work.
Bean bag. I know a lot of photographers that just carry a bean bag.
Yep, I actually got a little bean bag. I was going to have them made for Daytripper, where you can just rest it on the top of your car and put your camera on top, and that way it gives you just a little bit of vibration. If you just pull over to the side of the road, put it on your car.
Yeah.
It makes it so that it's not on the angle of your car. You can.
Yeah, exactly. You can kind of bend it around. But as I was saying, I'd like to remind everybody who's watching right now, we do have a current photo challenge. The review for that photo challenge is next week. Sorry, not next week, a week after next week, and the 8th, I believe, of June. And this is going to be the second review in this quarter, so there's still plenty of opportunity for you guys to gain points for our big photo contest. Of course, you win a $350 Daytripper Photo gift certificate, some Sennheiser swag, some lens pen stuff, and lots of cool stuff that we have for everybody who joins and competes in our photo challenges. This current photo challenge is Canada. Yes, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anybody's noticed at all. I
No?
don't think anybody has.
Brian, do you have a new hat?
Oh my God! I can't believe somebody noticed.
It's like you did the entire show like this.
Yeah. little arrows pointing.
Yes. I've retired the original hat that I've worn on every episode of the show. This is episode 174. So I've worn this for 173 episodes. And thank you very much, hat. But it's looking old, and you know, it's time for something. My head's changed. It doesn't fit me the same anymore. So I got a new hat, but it says Canada on it.
There we
which
go.
is very important. So the current photo challenge is Canada, and we've got a few photos that have already been submitted.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all so much. I can't wait to see if people are holding out or still making their photos. What's next? And I'm going to leave us all with a quote for the day, which doesn't have much to do with tripods, but that's okay. The quote is, "If I could tell the story in words, I wouldn't have to lug a camera." It's from Lewis Hine.
I like it.
It's true. Think about it. All the photos you try and take, you're really thinking of a story you're creating. And if you can have the words for that story, you wouldn't need a camera.
Yeah.
So, personally, I'm
they
not very
say,
good with words. So,
It's worth 1,000 words.
yeah, I'll carry a camera. All right, guys. Thank you both. Gabriel, I know you're staying a little past when you said you had to go. Thank you.
You're worth it.
Oh, isn't that sweet? Puddin'. Phil, thank you for being here too, buddy.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me. And I just want to say for the upcoming Canada shoot or Canada contest, if anyone wants to take wrestling pictures, apparently that's something that happens in Parliament now.
Oh,
Yeah, it was quite the top rope elbow slam going on
oh
there.
my God, this world
Elbow
sucks.
games.
Stupid.
Okay. Okay. Why is everything a gate now? Like, it was Watergate because that was the hotel.
That was the hotel's name.
Awesome Gate.
Exactly. Awesome Gate.
Daytripper Gate. Big conspiracy. What happened? Oh my God, that's so funny. Yeah, so apparently this woman or this man couldn't get through a blockade of people who were. He would move this way.
That man was Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, well, I haven't got there.
No,
yet.
no,
Okay.
it was a conservative.
He would move here, the crowd would move here and block him. He would move here, the crowd would
Yeah.
move here and block him. Back and
Okay.
forth and back and forth, and he couldn't get through. So finally, Trudeau says, "Screw this! What the hell, man? You're taking up all of our time. You're making us wait here." He walks over to try and help this guy through, and one of the women who was blocking him gets moved aside, and I got elbow. Blah, 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 blah. Trudeau sucks. Come on, people.
But at least we know we're not getting political on this.
Hey, do you remember
No.
Chrétien, what he did? He grabbed the photographer by the chin and to the ground.
Yeah.
I
And
know,
people
but
love Trudeau.
It'd be hard to see what trumps all of this.
Oh my God.
No.
Up there.
Okay, stopping broadcast.
Foul somebody or man, that guy's.
We now have 0 viewers. All of a sudden, what just happened? You said Trump. The next thing you know, we got.
Oh, they're getting political. Click.
Yeah, no, right. Okay, guys. Thank you all. Have a good night. We'll see you all next week. Don't
Good
forget to
night.
get your photos in for Canada. New photos only,
Yep.
guys. Don't forget. And we'll see you all next week. Oh, by the way, next week, Joseph Leduc is going to be our guest on the show. We're going to be talking about water droplet photography and
Awesome.
clinking water splashing and all kinds of cool stuff.
Oh, cool.
Because on June the 12th, we have a Daytripper Photo Masterclass that I'm going to be posting either tonight or tomorrow night on water droplets and all that kind of cool stuff. You should be very excited about this session. Joe Leduc will be on next week talking about it. See y'all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.